The following is a paid political announcement.
This November, down-ballot victories are more important than in any past election. Presenting the Get Out and Vote Republican campaign. The purpose is to reach local conservative and Republican voters, to drive them to vote, and to vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote in this crucial election year. Vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote Republican.
I'm Anthony D'Esposito, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Anthony D'Esposito for Congress.
Judge Jeanine Pirro.
She's the outspoken host. Judge Jeanine Pirro is dominating the headlines right now.
This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome, everyone, to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. I hope everybody's enjoying their day so far. It is Sunday. It is Sunday of the Labor Day weekend. I'm so depressed. You know I love this summer. It's a beautiful day here in New York City, and as always, we are armed and ready to serve justice with all my great listeners here on the Red Apple Audio Network. I hate Labor Day weekend. Let me tell you why. I labor every day. So it really doesn't matter, but it kind of signals the end of the summer, and then we start moving inward. And if you're from New York, and I'm originally from upstate New York, Elmira, if you've ever heard of it. And we were part of the snow belt. So, you know, the days get shorter and, you know, the light. I love the light. I love the sun. We see less and less of it. And I don't know. It's kind of a downer. But the fall is beautiful. So I've got that to look forward to. Always look forward to something. There is so much that happened this week in America. Kamala Harris decides to do a sit down with her favorite people, Dana Bash, and she drags along Tim Walz. I mean, think about it. Can you imagine Kamala Harris, President of the United States, meeting with Xi Jinping, and she's got to bring the coach along with her? I mean, how pathetic is this whole thing? And all the hand-wringing that went into whether or not she'd do a sit down. And it took her 40 days to actually do the sit down. And what is Kamala now standing for? She's standing for everything that Donald Trump stands for. She wants to build the wall. She doesn't want EV mandates anymore. She doesn't want tax on tips. She wants to make sure that that all of us are in a position to combat inflation, and she's going to fight for it on the first day that she's president. Forget the fact that she's been in there for, 1,300 days. Someone counted it. And, you know, as a prosecutor, the question that I have is, given the fact that you voted, to make sure that there was an EV mandate, and you voted to make sure that there was no wall, and that, and that you said you wanted no private health insurance, and that, Medicare for all. Were you a liar then, or are you lying now? I mean, you're just a liar. And my concern, folks, is, and I'll ask this of the guests that we're going to have here this morning, Hogan, Gidley, and Mike Davis, is there enough time for America to see who the real Kamala Harris is? Because the amazing part of this is that even though she's been vice president for 3.5 years, and the most unpopular vice president in American history, since they've been keeping numbers anyway, nobody really knows what she stands for, but they like her because she's full of joy and happiness. Joy. Thank God. Look at those pictures. She's so happy. She's so wonderful. It's all joy. Well, joy is what, the Nazis talked about before they took the world in a different direction. But I want to know who she is, what she stands for, and Hogan Gidley is going to join me on that. There is so much that's happening, and we're at a turning point right now in American history. So I'll be speaking with former White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. After that, joined by former Chief Counsel for Nominations Mike Davis, both really smart guys. It's all coming up in just a few moments here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Investments, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Judge Jeanine.
Hi, I'm Jeanine Pirro, and this is Protecting Your Investments, sponsored by the Colonial Metals Group. Today we're talking about free speech and the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has finally come clean with the fact that he suppressed free speech at the direction of the White House and the FBI. Think about that. Do you think these people have your interest at heart? That's why Colonial Metals Group is so important, and you need to familiarize yourself with what they're doing so that you can protect your investment.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now is that very person, former White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Please join me in welcoming Hogan. Hogan, you know you've heard him on this show before. He served in the White House Deputy Press Secretary for former President Donald Trump. He's press secretary for the Trump re-election campaign, and he's got all kinds of stuff going on, but he's smart. That's all you need to hear from me. Now, all right, Hogan. So here we are, something like, 62 days left before the election. Kamala Harris gives one interview, but I want to talk about the lead up to the interview. I think it took them 39 days after all kinds of hand-wringing to decide that this woman should do an interview, although many on MSNBC don't think she should. But what do you think led her to choose Dana Bash?
Well, look, I think CNN wasn't called the Clinton News Network way back in the 90s for nothing. OK, they've obviously been, far left for a long time, protecting those, that they support politically and prosecuting, going after those they didn't like. I mean, I lived through the Trump years, of course, being in the White House and on the campaign. And ever since, I mean, it just seems like every story they put out, whether it be about COVID, whether it be about Trump doing something in the White House, it was all wrong every single time. No one ever pays for it. That's the media writ large. Let's be honest. But you're going with Dana Bash because in them you feel like you have a friend. You want someone out there who you think is going to protect you. Look, interestingly enough, I think it was such a wonderful moment for all those out there who said, yes, first female president, slay queen. I need a man to sit beside me. I mean, how weird.
Well, it's not just
How
any man.
insulting is that?
It's Coach Waltz. Come on, Hogan, get into it. He's a coach. Let me tell you something. I've never seen someone so caught up in so many lies since I entered politics. I mean, one or two embellishments, but this guy constantly lies. It's not just about his service or his rank. It's about whether or not he got awards. It's about so many other things that, and the guy has no shame. He'll show up anytime, anywhere and go out there and talk about what a great guy he is. Of
course he will. Because listen, in these condensed time frames, right, they had to get someone that she was comfortable with personally. That was obviously Waltz, because everything she's ever wanted to do from the federal government level, all the radical policies, Tim Waltz did. He did those things in his state. So she says, yep, that's my checkbox. I love it. Even though everyone said she was moderating. She had the chance to go with someone like Shapiro, but of course she couldn't do that because he's Jewish. So she had to pick someone else. She was more comfortable with Waltz, and I understand that. The problem is you lose a lot of the vetting time in that moment. But these aren't like deep, dark secrets of Tim Waltz. Everyone knows this. These are simple Google searches. You could find out how many times he had lied about his military service, about his drunk driving incident. All of these things now are coming out, and he's not good.
Well, I can't help myself.
He's not a head coach.
He wasn't even a head coach. You're right. But I have to stop you for a second. The drunk driving thing really cracks me up. Do you know what he said to the cops when they stopped him? He said, no, not to the cops. He said, his lawyer said later, he said the reason he was speeding is he thought someone was chasing him. Of course there was someone chasing him. It was the cops who were chasing him. But what I want to know is what was his excuse before the cops started chasing him for speeding? I mean, who was chasing him then? And then there were a whole bunch of lies that he said about that. And, and then he didn't admit that he was driving drunk. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And then, for her to bring him to the debate, I mean, it cuts her question time in half, and it limits the potential exposure risks for her. And, it's harder to do follow-ups because as soon as she starts to engage in a word salad, the coach can jump in and save the day for her. But, there are a lot of people, and let's be serious about this, Hogan. A lot of people think that, she'll make a great president. Why do you think people think that?
I think it's more about the joy and the vibes right now. I don't know that they believe she would be a good president. I think it's that kind of media manufactured caricature of what she actually is. And I hate to break it to folks out there, but I just went to the gas station for paying high prices for gas here, and I tried to pay with Joy, and they wouldn't accept it. Then I tried Vibes, and they said, no, we don't accept that either. You need money. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't have enough of it to pay for this gas because of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the feeling. They went from someone who, let's be honest, was a corpse. This person didn't have a pulse, to someone who does. Now, the same media that lied to us about Russia collusion said that was, that was real, that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake, is the same media that told us Kamala Harris, in a moment of truth, they said she's a drag on the ticket. She's at 35%. We can't have her at the top of the ticket. Remember, Joe Biden said he was just a transitional president, right?
Yep.
Until he said, I didn't realize things were this bad. I need to stay. Even he knew she was this bad. But they put her up, and now this media that has lied to us forever is trying to tell us she is the best candidate, she is the best vice president, and she will be an amazing president. It's an absolute joke, and the people are buying it for now. Some of them. I still think this race has gone back to, if you look at the polls in the swing states and other places, it's settled back to where it was before the debate with Joe Biden. It's still going to be close. It's still going to be tight. It comes down to ground game and all you have to do to win elections at the local level.
Yeah, well, and the interesting part about this Joy, and then of course she adopted Obama's Hope, is that was like right before World War II started, and Hitler started his whole thing. He wanted people, he wanted people to believe in joy and happiness, and looking forward, never looking back. I mean, it's right out of a Nazi, it's socialism playbook. It's all about, when one, I think it was Lenin who said this, when one makes a revolution, one cannot mark time. One must always go forward, never go back. And, all of this stuff that they're talking about is really socialism rearing its ugly head again. Those people in history were promised equality. They were promised everyone would have the same medicine and socialized medicine, but no country can survive. And yet a lot of people are buying this. And then when I guess their polling shows that, it's not really working, then they start adopting everything that Donald Trump has done. I mean, this woman actually wants to build the wall. I mean, how stupid do they think we are? Or are we stupid?
No, look, she has done so many things to hurt the American people while she was vice president. And now she won't even come out and say these things publicly. I mean, sure, she had one interview and she said a few of these things. But she was leading up to this, this interview, leaking different positions and policy changes up to and including the same thing Donald Trump believes on no tax on tips, on building a wall.
Well, babe, I got to stop you there. Hang on to your thought. Do you know what Newsweek said? Newsweek had a headline, something like Kamala Harris adopts no tax on tips, and most Republicans support that. This is a headline in Newsweek. They don't even mention Trump. They don't even say, by the way, she took it from Trump. They just make it seem like she came up with it, and all the Republicans are cheering her on. Anyway, sorry,
right.
I had to
do it.
No,
but it's the same thing as when she did do it the first two. Another headline was, the comparison of Donald Trump says no tax on tips will greatly hurt the economy, costing us money, billions of dollars. And it's like Kamala Harris says no tax on tips. What a great, idea for the future of this country. I mean, it's insane to watch them cover for Democrats as they have for their, entire existence. But this is really far beyond. It goes past a bias against Donald Trump or a hatred for Donald Trump. This is an investment in Kamala Harris and radical ideology. There is no other way to explain why the media gives her pass after pass, refuses to ask her difficult questions on difficult issues. And the whole thing comes down to this. When she says in future tense on day one, I will do, or I promise you we will together, you are the sitting vice president of the United States. Do it now. And by the way, it reminds me of Biden and COVID when he would say in 2020, I have a plan to fix it. You won't tell us? You're just going to let millions die and just say, well, when I'm president, I'll tell you. You're not going to tell me now? It's the same thing with her. I'll do all these from day one. So you're telling me you have the policy prescriptions to fix it and to help people and ease their suffering for 5 months, and you're not doing it? I think that's cruel. That's cruel on top of idiocy.
Well, the interesting thing is, didn't Joe Biden tell us that he was going to cure cancer? Whatever happened to that one? Do you remember that?
But of course. He told us a lot of things he was going to do.
And have you noticed, by the way, that he has been out of sight for well over 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks? He went to California on vacation after the Democrat National Convention. Now he's in Rehoboth Beach and, taking another vacation. He won't even look at the press now, won't even try to answer them. It's like he's angry with everyone. And, he was elected, Hogan Gidley, as a compassionate president. He was going to be the one who was going to unify us and bring us together. And this guy hasn't spoken in 2.5 weeks. He won't even look at anybody. It's like, I'm fed up. I don't care about you anymore. This is the textbook definition of what it's like to not be a leader. I'm going to take my ball and bat and go home because, Kamala Harris shivved me in the back. And, it is really frightening to wonder who's running the country. Everyone wants to know who's running the country. I don't know who's running the country. You don't know, but it's like middle management. And it's like the deep state. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. You remember when we would always look for Hunter Biden? We'd always kind of joke around on Twitter with always, where's Hunter? Because no one ever, he was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I have the same question about where's Joe? Like who's running the country? There are all of these horrible things. Kamala Harris is out on the campaign trail saying, beef costs more, gas costs more. We can't pay for homes. Well, where's your boss? What is he doing? And he's nowhere to be found. Like you said, he's on a beach in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, just living the dream out in California on vacation. I mean, the guy spent 40% of his time as president at home in Delaware. Like, what is he doing for the American people except hurting us at every turn? The policy prescriptions he actually pushed and that he implemented are damaging to the American people. Kamala Harris is an extension of that. She will double down on it. I don't care what she said.
Anyway, Hogan, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We've got not a lot of time left before the election. I'm sure we'll have you back on. And never forget, that's a commitment we made on 9/11. Honor it by donating $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at t2t.org. That's T2T.org.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now, former Chief Counsel for Nominations, U.S. Senate Committee on Judiciary, Mike Davis. You know him. You see him on Fox. He's also been on this show many times. He's a really smart guy. So join me in welcoming Mike Davis to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. And by the way, Mike is founder and president, folks, of the Internet Accountability Project, an advocacy organization fighting to rein in big tech. So I'm going to segue right from there. So Mark Zuckerberg, Mike Davis, comes out and says, oh, mea culpa, mea culpa. I have to now admit that the FBI and the White House and White House administration officials forced me to take down the Hunter Biden laptop story. And, I never should have done it. And I suppressed free speech. And I'm sorry. Is that good enough for you?
Hell no, Judge. And you know that because, look, Mark Zuckerberg runs a $1 trillion monopolist called Meta. They own Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. They have Section 230 immunity from the federal government where they make a lot of money and they're not held liable for defamation and other things that happen on their platform.
Right.
And they get this antitrust amnesty. So you have the federal government with their hands around these monopolist throats, and then the federal government can get these monopolists to do whatever the federal government wants them to do.
And they did during the 2020 election. They did.
They rigged the election, right? We have Zuck bucks and their censorship. If the American people would have known about Hunter Biden's laptop, the polling is very clear. Biden would not have won.
Right. You know, the amazing part of it is, in addition to being a co-conspirator with the White House, he also gave $400 million when you talk about Zuckerbucks or whatever they call it. And he said, you know, it wasn't meant to go in one direction, and I'm not going to give any money this year. Really? I want to know, Mike Davis, who contacted you? When did they contact you? You know, show me the emails. I want those people identified. Why did you buckle to them? And then they start telling you, well, we expect some Russian disinformation to come down. You know, and then, of course, he suppresses the laptop and he does all this stuff about COVID. Anybody who says anything that isn't part of the pharmaceutical directive of you got to vaccinate yourself, you know, is disinformation and misinformation. You know, it's not good enough for me. But my question is, why now? Why is Zuckerberg coming out now?
Well, I think you said the key word, Judge. It was co-conspirator, because I think Mark Zuckerberg understands Trump's going to win, or it looks pretty likely Trump's going to win, because Kamala didn't get her post-convention bounce that she needed, and Trump and RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard stole that bounce. And so Trump's on a pretty good path right now. And I think Mark Zuckerberg understands, okay, I need an insurance policy. This is going to come out. You have RFK Jr.'s lawsuit against Facebook. This information is going to come out in the discovery process. And I think Mark Zuckerberg's trying to get ahead of this. And as I said, you said co-conspirator. And that's important because this actually is a criminal conspiracy under our federal civil rights law. It's a conspiracy against rights under 18 U.S.C. 241. You can't have private actors collude with the government to do things that the federal government can't do, like censor Americans, violate their constitutional rights, their God-given right to speak and associate, and other rights. And that's exactly what they did with these government officials colluding with these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists, whether it's Facebook or Google.
Yeah, you know, I as you speak, Mike Davis, and obviously, you know, I agree with what you're saying, but it is so foreign to me that we're even discussing the government suppressing communications between Americans. It is stunning to me that it's even an issue for discussion, and that, you know, they're like, oh, well, whatever. I mean, this is the United States of America. Our founding fathers are spinning in their graves.
Yeah, this is Orwellian, it's dystopian, and it's very dangerous. You cannot have the governments get into the speech debate business, and that's exactly what they've done with this Biden-Harris regime. They do it under the guise of protecting us. They're protecting us from misinformation and disinformation. They're protecting us from COVID. They're protecting our elections. They're not. This is what Marxists do in totalitarian regimes to control their population, and we saw this with disinformation, misinformation during COVID. How many of these doctors and scientists and other experts got censored, deplatformed, canceled?
Some of them lost their licenses in California.
And they ended up being right. They were right on the 6-foot rule. They were right on the cloth mask mandate. These were highly destructive, arbitrary BS scientific decrees from Tony Fauci that had no scientific basis, and they destroyed our schools, they destroyed our economy, they destroyed people's lives. How many people needlessly suffered and died because of because of the censorship? Because we did not allow the scientific debate. We actually had the governments collude with these private actors, including these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists, to shut down the scientific method, the scientific debate. It is there must be accountability for this.
Well, you know what? We are now a country where there doesn't seem to be consequences anymore for, illegal behavior, unethical behavior, even with Afghanistan. I mean, I heard Donald Trump the other day saying the first day, he's in office, he wants to know, who was responsible for what happened in Afghanistan. He's going to fire them. And that's what Americans want, because we all know that, God forbid, we screw up in our job seriously, you're going to get fired. You're not going to get promoted. And, but this whole idea of, the Zuckerberg, now I agree with you. He's pulling back and admitting all this. I think he's worried that Trump is going to win. And, now he's trying to, come clean. People like that don't come clean. It's all about them. It's all about the money. But, when you speak about COVID, I can't help but segue to Robert Kennedy, who is now talking about making America healthy again, regenerating the soil, taking the corruption out of the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA. And, I had no idea that the FDA, 75% of its budget is from pharmaceutical corporations. I mean, you could be a first grader and figure out that that's a setup for Americans to die and to not be protected in terms of their health and their medicine.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first jobs, Judge, out of college was working in the Bush 43 administration, and I worked at HHS. I had the displeasure of working with Tony Fauci, who's always been a politician in a lab coat. And my job was to, as a 23-year-old, was to help the secretary of HHS select the scientists and other people who go on these advisory boards at the CDC, at the FDA, and other agencies, these medical and scientific agencies. It's shocking to me how captured these agencies are, right? These people who go on these boards who are supposed to do the grant reviews, like on gain-of-function research with Tony Fauci. Tony Fauci picked his own board to go on.
I didn't know that.
His board of directors to review his grants, and he expected that if you didn't rubber stamp his board, he'd run to the Washington Post and say we were corrupting his science. And at the FDA, the people on the FDA boards who approve these drugs, it's the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, these agencies are captured. RFK Jr. is absolutely correct.
And, the sad part about it is that these people are allowed to get lifetime royalties from, the pharmaceutical companies that they're pushing. It is outrageous. And I really believe, and I hope there's enough time, Mike, that, with something like 64 days left until the election, I hope there's enough time for, RFK to get his message out. And because I think he is one of the good guys out there. And, to all my listeners, if you didn't hear his speech about, from whence he comes, from the Kennedys and their belief in truth and justice, just go to Google and either hit the sound or print out his speech. It was absolutely brilliant. But I want to talk now about quickly the sentencing for former President Trump on September 18th. Good old Judge Juan Merchan is back in the news. Now we're finding out. And by the way, I said this right at the beginning. I said, I guarantee you the Juan Merchan's daughter is making $9 million off of the Biden-Harris campaign fundraising effort. Now, all of a sudden, they come out and now they say the number's $9 million. If that isn't a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, and as you know, Judge, here's the bigger conflict is this daughter, this Lauren Merchan, is raising money off of this unprecedented criminal prosecution of a former and likely president over which her father, Judge Juan Merchan, is presiding, and that requires his recusal under New York statute. It goes out 6 degrees of separation in New York. The daughter's the first degree. This isn't just you and me saying this. You had a former Clinton federal judge say this on Caitlin Collins' show on April 5th on CNN, that he has to recuse because of the daughter's fundraising. How did Judge Merchan respond to Trump when he raised this? He said he's going to throw Trump in prison. He put an illegal gag order on Trump and said he's going to throw Trump in prison if he mentions Lauren Merchan's name again. I mean, it's just unbelievable corruption.
Well, it is unbelievable corruption. And I think former President Trump is still under that gag order, which is amazing. After a trial, after a conviction, there's still a gag order. And, I want to make clear that, I'll bet if you ask anybody, what Trump was convicted of. They wouldn't be able to tell you the statute because, the DA, Alvin Bragg, didn't even identify what statute he was charging that felony that bootstrapped it and resurrected the misdemeanor. But what's going to happen on September 18th?
Well, selfishly, as a political hack judge, I hope that Judge Merchan is stupid enough to sentence Trump to prison, even for 1 hour, because the Supreme Court of the United States will get that emergency appeal very quickly and stay the execution of judgment, and it will guarantee that Trump wins by a landslide. A few thoughts. The mugshot helped Trump politically. Merchan needs to put Trump in jail. I know Trump, I'm not the one going to jail, so I shouldn't pray for this. But just put him in jail for an hour and then see what happens. See how the American people respond. This judge is so partisan. He's so corrupt. His daughter has such a big his daughter has such a big financial stake. I actually think he may pull the trigger and go through with putting Trump in prison in Rikers Island.
Yeah, I think I happen to agree with you, although obviously you and I don't know what the reality is. But, he may put him in house arrest so that he can't campaign, talk about election interference. And I just want to make sure my listeners understand that there is no appeal on the recusal issue. That as a county judge, and I was exactly what Juan Merchan was, you yourself as a judge, you make the decision whether or not you feel that your presiding over the case is unethical based upon all of the reasons that the defense has proffered, or even the prosecution in some cases. So, that is still, it's his decision to make, and he's standing with it. All right. So speaking of one idiot, now we've got another one, Jack Smith. I mean, this guy is one obsessed guy. Talk about Trump derangement syndrome. He now gets a superseding indictment against former President Trump. And on the documents case, talk about, not the documents case, on the obstruction charges in D.C. Talk about that.
Yeah, so this Jack Smith is like the Freddy Krueger of this Trump lawfare and election interference. He has, the courts have taken off his ear and his arm and his nose, and he's bleeding everywhere. And he keeps coming back for Trump all bloodied and scary. This guy is truly creepy. And the Supreme Court in two monumental cases, the Fisher decision and the presidential immunity decision, essentially gutted his case in June. It should just go away. There's probably 20% of his case left, and that 20% eventually will get tossed on First Amendment grounds. Mm-hmm. But Jack Smith just ignored two Supreme Court rulings on you can't use a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute for corporate fraud to go after your political enemies, and presidents are immune from prosecution for their official acts, just like they're civilly immune. So the Supreme Court made that very clear. Jack Smith filed a superseding indictment where he just ignored those two Supreme Court rulings.
And forget about the Supreme Court rulings. He ignored the policy of the Department of Justice that you don't indict or announce an investigation within 60 or 90 days of an election. I don't care if it's 60 or 90. I mean, people are going to start voting on September 20th. I mean, with these with these mail-in ballots. So it is stunning to me. But look, Jack Smith is, Merrick Garland appointed him, and it appears that appointment may not have been legal. That I understand he needs the advice and consent of the Senate on that. Am I wrong there?
You're exactly right. I ran nominations in the Senate. This violates the Appointments Clause and the Appropriations Clause, as Judge Eileen Cannon correctly ruled down in the Southern District of Florida in the presidential records case. This D.C. Obama judge, Tanya Shukin, she's just going to ignore that ruling. It's not binding on her. It's persuasive. But if this does get to the Supreme Court, I have no doubt the Supreme Court's going to say this special counsel appointment is unconstitutional. The office was not created by Congress, not confirmed by the Senate. Unlimited jurisdiction, unlimited budget, unlimited power. And we see with Jack Smith the dangers when you create these all-powerful offices with little accountability to Congress.
Yeah, well, Merrick Garland certainly isn't a vision of integrity himself. And you know what I hear? I hear that some of the Democrats are not happy with him because they haven't jailed enough Republicans. Do you hear that one?
Oh, I can't imagine how Merrick Garland couldn't be jailing enough Republicans. Look what he's jailed a 75-year-old grandma who prayed in an abortion clinic. I mean, Planned Parenthood really has their champion as their attorney general.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike Davis, I want to thank you for joining us. And we've got like 64 days left, and it's going to be a very interesting time. Thanks so much for joining us on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And never forget, that's a commitment we made on 9/11. Honor it by donating $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at t2t.org. That's T2T.org. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will gavel out with my closing argument. It's all coming up here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
This is the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Okay, now it's time for me to gavel out with my closing argument. You know, folks, there's an election, and there's not a lot of time before it happens. You've got to make sure that you get the word out. You know, there's all this joy and happiness about Kamala, and she is more than, as Hogan Gidley said, she's more than a flip-flopper, she's a liar. And he's absolutely right about that. I think the American people need to prove to the Democrats and to Kamala Harris that we're not stupid, that you can't say Medicare for all and then when you're running for president say, oh, no, I really didn't mean that. You can't say and co-sponsor legislation that mandates that we all get electric cars and that gas-powered cars not be manufactured after a certain year, and then run for president and say, no, I'm not in favor of EV mandates. You can't be in charge of the border where we saw 10, 15, 20 million people come into this country, many of them criminals. We see it if you live in New York City. We see it around the country. And then say, I'm for building the wall, when Kamala Harris herself said the wall was nothing more than a medieval vanity project of Donald Trump. When Kamala Harris herself said it was un-American to build a wall. There's not a lot of time. And I think it's important for everyone to understand you've got a role to play. Unless you want to pay more taxes and unless you want to be subject to the, to the lunacy that the left has brought us for the last 3 years and 9 months. It's not good, folks, and it doesn't look good for America going forward. I'm thrilled that Tulsi Gabbard and RFK are joining Donald Trump. These are two honest actors. These are two people who believe in America, making it safe, making it strong, and making sure that our children are protected from the chronic diseases and the corruption in NIH and the CDC and the FDA. It's up to you, folks. Anyway, we're out of time. Make sure you join us right back here next week, same time, same place, for the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Have a great day, everyone. Take care of yourself. Be safe. God bless. Bye.